They took a safari jeep from the airport. Tammy smiled as she looked around the large open country they were driving through. Jet sat beside Ed and Tammy rode Sirocco alongside. The driver seemed uncomfortable with Jet being in the jeep and kept looking at him from the corner of his eye. "Mavuso, don't worry, he is a pet," Ed told the driver in Mavuso's native Zulu language. Mavuso didn't look convinced. It made Tammy smile as she thought how odd it must appear to the man. They saw a black-breasted snake eagle hovering above until it dived, caught a snake and carried it back into the air. "That is an amazing bird," Ed told her. "He catches the snake, kills it, and eats it while he's still flying. It's also the only eagle that hovers for such long periods of time." "He really does all that in the air?" Tammy gasped. Ed nodded. The black-breasted snake eagle circled them as he consumed the snake in no time at all and then flew and landed on Tammy's shoulder. Ed gasped as the eagle and Tammy looked at each other. The eagle travelled on Tammy's shoulder for a while before flying away and going back to hunting. Mavuso looked stressed. "Very elegant," Tammy said. Ed didn't know what to say, so just nodded. They saw a green sandpiper, a redshank, and a group of African jacanas. The jacanas were almost all black with a little white and chased one another while calling out a loud noise that sounded like kyaur. The people they drove past, walking in the roads or sitting outside small huts in their villages, amazed Tammy. The local population had insisted, over the years, on maintaining their ancient and traditional ways of living. Little had changed. The streets were full of stalls offering hundreds of different items for sale, from hot nuts covered in a strange sticky red coating to tribal garments and beautiful multicolored satin scarves. They received a few strange glances as people acknowledged Jet brazenly sitting in the jeep. Mavuso returned their looks nervously as he grudgingly drove on. Kruger National Park is the largest safari park in South Africa, covering 20,000 square kilometers, and is home to a great variety of birds and reptiles, plus 147 mammal species. This is a great opportunity to see the Big Five: the lion, leopard, elephant, rhino, and buffalo. We should also get a good look at the cheetah, zebra, giraffe, and several species of baboon, hippo, and warthog. "Am I supposed to remember all this?" Tammy said with a smile. As they went deeper into the park, Tammy caught a glimpse of a lioness hiding behind some bushes. When Tammy smiled at her, the lioness ran away, leaving Tammy puzzled. Tammy rode Sirocco ahead of the jeep and, at this point, realized the difference between a free animal and a caged one. The lioness had been careful not to let anyone other than Tammy see her. An animal kept in captivity, even for the shortest time, would lose the talent for being able to avoid being seen. Tammy remembered the story of Samson, the Siberian tiger, and now understood how captivity had made him an easy target. Mavuso turned to Ed and muttered something in Zulu. Ed raised his hand calmly and spoke to him. Tammy looked over her shoulder, watching. Mavuso certainly didn't like being their driver, but she didn't know what they were talking about. Mavuso turned, annoyed, back to the wheel. Tammy frowned at Ed. "He isn't happy with you on the horse. He thinks it puts you at risk of an attack from the wildlife. Normally, he'd be right," Ed explained, shrugging. It was about 2 miles later that Tammy again saw the lioness, now with the rest of her pride, walking along the field towards the jeep. They walked slowly with long, graceful strides, only occasionally breaking into a brief run to keep up. "Are they welcoming you into their territory?" Ed smiled cheerily as he watched the way they greeted Tammy. "I'm not sure." There were 4 lionesses, including the one Tammy had first seen in the bushes, and 1 lion. It didn't take long before Tammy began to get the feeling that something was wrong. "Stop the jeep," she shouted. Mavuso started arguing, again in Zulu, adamant that he wouldn't stop when so many lions were nearby. "Please, make him stop," Tammy pleaded. Ed saw the panic on Tammy's face and wondered what was wrong. He leaned over to Mavuso and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, telling him it would be all right to stop. Mavuso wasn't convinced and reluctantly followed Ed's command. Tammy walked towards the front of the jeep, then stopped and waited. The lionesses stayed where they were as the lion approached Tammy. Mavuso started to reach for his gun. Ed stopped him. As the lion got awfully close to the jeep, Mavuso panicked and started arguing again. Tammy couldn't understand him and wished she could speak Zulu like Ed. She made a silent vow that she would learn. "Calm down," Ed said forcefully, shaking his shoulder roughly, forcing Mavuso to look at him and not the lion. The lion was right next to Tammy. She knelt down and placed her hand on the thick mane. They stared into each other's eyes as the lion tried to tell Tammy what was wrong. She suddenly understood and nodded. "Ed, I have to go with them," she said. "Go where?" Ed asked. "There's no time. Just get to your radio and follow me." "I'll explain later," she said. Ed grabbed the radio and started to reach for his gun. "Don't bring the gun. It'll intimidate the lions," Tammy said. "It'll intimidate me not having one," Ed replied. At Tammy's pleading expression, Ed reluctantly left the gun behind. He jumped out of the jeep and followed Tammy, the lions, Jet, and Sirocco into the bush. They hadn't gone far when Ed heard the jeep driving away at speed. Mavuso had obviously had enough and was too scared to wait around. "Oh, that's just great," he moaned. "We're quite safe," Tammy assured Ed. "I don't doubt it for a minute. I'm just wondering how long we're going to be stuck out here." The lions led them a long way from the road, deep into the park. Ed was becoming tired from walking in the heat, and although he kept asking Tammy what was wrong, she hadn't answered. She was busy following the lions and had a deep frown of concentration on her brow. "Are you actually talking with the lions now?" he asked. "Yes." Suddenly, Tammy and the lions broke into a run and headed towards a large tree. Ed looked at the tree, and at first he couldn't see anything. Then he saw a lioness lying under it, motionless. Tammy crouched over the lioness, stroking her head and feeling her stomach, which was red with blood. "She's been shot and lost a lot of blood," said Ed. "If she dies, her cubs will die," Tammy replied. "Cubs?" Ed was puzzled. He hadn't seen any cubs. He looked around at the 5 lions standing anxiously around them. He saw no lion cubs anywhere. "Over there," Tammy said, pointing behind the tree. Ed saw the heads of 3 little cubs peering out from behind a bush. They were just visible, hiding in fear after the shock of seeing their wounded mother. His heart sank in sympathy as he looked at them. "Is there anything you can do?" Tammy asked. Ed bent down and nervously touched the wounded lioness, looking at the other lions in case they attacked. They paid no attention to him. "The injury is too serious for us to do anything. She'll need proper care. I'm no good at this sort of thing. It doesn't look good." "I wish Crane was here," Ed said. "Can you call for help on the radio?" Tammy asked. "Yes, that I can do. Clever of you to remind me to bring it, especially since the driver ran away," he said, and clicked the radio on. Ed spoke to one of the park rangers and informed him of the situation. He told them where he was and that their hired driver had abandoned them. "Just hurry and bring medical supplies," he said, and switched off the radio. "They're sending a new driver who is also a vet. You'll have to keep a hand over the wound until he gets here, to stop as much bleeding as you can." "Okay, Ed." Tammy was still stroking the wounded lioness as the 3 cubs, sensing some safety in Tammy's presence, started to move closer to their mother. They whimpered as they huddled around their mother and Tammy, trying to understand what was going on. "It's all right," Tammy whispered. "It'll be all right, you'll see." The other lions gathered closer to Tammy, and Ed backed off, not wanting to get in their way. They all paced around, restless with worry for their wounded lioness, and eager for Tammy to do something.